Today, I just wanted to spend 15 or 20 minutes with one of my favorite people out there in the investor space in Santa Monica, but also somebody who's very important to us because he was one of the very first investors in Expert Dojo. Now, I'm not talking about today when we have 100 investments, when we're investing in two companies a week right now, and when most people will look at our investments and see that those investments are incredibly strong. I'm talking about like right at the beginning, when this was merely an idea and a slight inception, when we asked Jeffrey to take a big bet on us. And Jeffrey he came in with his advice, he came in with his help, he came in with his money. And I would say that Expert Dojo would more than likely not be what it is today without Jeffrey stepping in. So I want to just ask, if I can, just ask you a couple of questions, Jeffrey. Just talk about the experience that you've been through at Expert Dojo. Just be very straightforward with everybody. Many of the people listening here are potential future investors and also folks who are just really interested in the journey of the dojo. But first of all, thanks for being a part of the journey.
You're welcome.
So let's start with, why did you invest with Expert Dojo all the way back in those days when we had nothing?
Well, I think in retrospect, I probably would not have invested if I have the knowledge today how I assess investment as to then. Like, I don't know if it's like many companies, but for me, I built my own companies. They were successful. And what happens is you get a little bored with your own companies,
right,
and you do other stuff. And it's a little complicated to start your own company again and go through all the rigmaroles. As you get older, you want to have that enjoyment of the creation and the development, but you don't want to really put in those 80-hour work weeks anymore. Right. So I took the money I earned in my companies, which of course I could earn much more by putting it back into my companies. But of course, I was looking for outside investments. I had already started to do some through some associates that I'd met down through the years. And then I got introduced to Brian and the dojo. And there was a level of excitement there that there wasn't anywhere else. There was a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement, a lot of entrepreneurship, which is my bread and butter, what I was raised on. And, I started to look at the companies. Probably, let's say I looked at them layer 1 through 3, okay? And I thought that was pretty good. But now I'm probably to layer 20, okay, before investing. So, of course, I invested with companies that looked good on the surface because I believe what the people said, or more accurately, believe what the people believed, okay? Which wasn't always necessarily what happened, okay? And I found out through these startups what the problems were and what to look for in the future, which of course the dojo is doing as well. Okay, we both grew together.
We went on the journey at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Companies we were excited about then, are not the breadwinners we purported them to be. Some are solid, some are on teetering, but as the years went by, the successive investments were much stronger, because both the dojo and myself looked at companies a little stricter, evaluated them more, and of course, you got a better product to begin with that's further along.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, which is that at the beginning, when you're investing in companies, many people feel that if a company looks good, if people say that something can be done, then it's a great idea. It's exciting that we should invest in those companies. And of course, where we've got to now, especially with 100 companies under our belts, how many companies have you now got investments in? 50 plus?
Yeah, at least.
Right. With 50 plus under your belt, we now know we need to see top execution in a founder. So the ability to execute going forward based on success going backwards. We know that we need to have clear line of sight to get to $100,000 a month in revenue, or we're not going to touch or go near the company. We know that the market has to be a $10 million a month market, or again, we're not going to go there. We need to know that the team have got to have all of the skill gaps to require to get products actually done, finished, out the door and sold and successful. And we need to make sure that the founder is a great fundraiser. If we don't score in the 90 percentile of at least 4 out of 5 of those, and a very good reason why the 5th is not there, then we're not going to touch it. But as a beginner going into the startup community, people don't know that. Neither venture capitalists when they're starting, nor investors when they're going in at the start. And I look at the companies we invest in now, and I'm 100% with you. I think as we've gone through that journey, we now get to a stage where we see them, and yeah, we're not sure, but we're sure as heck that we got a good chance of getting a good outcome based on all of those factors being hit.
You know what I use a lot now as a reference with the startups is I always like the scale of 1 to 100 for whatever I'm talking about. So sometimes you start a company and you think, yeah, what we've done is we're at an 80, right? And then a year later you go, yeah, we weren't at an 80, we were at a 20. Okay, and now we're at a 60. You see what I'm saying? So that's how the development came for me, and I'm sure Dojo. We thought we were 70 or 60 or 80, but really we were 20. And
Yeah.
now we're probably 60 or 70 or 80. You know, you learn more and more. You have a bigger team to evaluate, somebody looking at it financially, somebody looking at marketing, somebody looking at staff, and of course the market. You know, there's multiple levels there. And like you said, you know, you like to trust and believe people, you know, and they came from the coal mining industry and they wanted to do something in the coal mining industry, then you're like all for it, right? Because they have that background, right? But I find a lot of companies, they don't do what they did before, okay? They got an idea. It's like a guy who wants to start a restaurant. You know, he always liked the restaurant. He wants to start a restaurant, but he wasn't in the restaurant business. To me, I also look for people that have strong backgrounds in that particular business. You know, if you were a heart surgeon and now you want to develop a valve for the heart that's never been done, then that sounds like a winning idea to me.
Yeah.
And it's solid by background. So I think that's where you look at the founder and the idea and the aha moment. They got to sort of blend with history and experience, right? Not just
Yeah.
an idea, right? But something more,
I
right?
agree. And there has to be that track record going all the way through. And I think on top of that, the other huge learn that I had personally in the dojo is that even if we choose the right companies, because we're choosing them right at the very early stage, where either they lose and we lose our money, or they win and we can get up to 1,000 times return on them, it's very hard for them to be able to do it on their own. And that's why we started at the beginning and we're like, okay, here's 50K and go at it. And they can't go at it because they don't have the resources, and 50,000 or 100,000 isn't enough to make a dent in anything they need to do. However, by the time we evolved and we're like, okay, we need to make sure we surround these guys with investors. Great. Fast forward, we have thousands of investors. Right. We also need to make sure that we help these guys with growth. If they can't sell, and you and I are very similar, like we're salespeople. We just believe you build a company through strong sales, not through talking, not through anything else, by doing and going out there and getting it done. But many people who have great ideas or great creatives or great ops people, they're not able to do that. So we then built the growth studio, and now our growth studio, our branding studio where we help them build, our personal branding studio where we then add on to that, and then also the access to the investors we have afterwards. We realized that actually before, we didn't really have the best opportunity, even with the best founders, while now we're guiding these people up Mount Everest like a Sherpa.
Yeah, they absolutely need it. I mean, you're the main failing of all the company, I should say, is sales and marketing. It doesn't matter how good your idea is if no one knows about it, okay?
Yeah.
And no one knows about it in a convincing and sensible manner. You know, everything has to be 1, 2, 3. You have to get someone within 3 seconds today to be interested. Then you can take them to the next step. But, you know, there's too much stuff going on in the world. Everybody's easily distracted. And if you put something aside, even yourself doing something, oh, I really like that, you get to it. And all of a sudden it's 3 months later and you see it again. You know, you just don't do it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I also notice as we've evolved and we've come through at the beginning, you'd like pick out companies, or I'd pick out companies. And now you say to me, okay, Brian, you're going to go through your cohort. You're going to pick out the absolute best ones for me. And that's it. And I don't want to have to try and work at it. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to meet with those people. I don't want any of the middle ones. I don't want any of the end ones. I just want the top ones. And I think that's how like we've developed our relationship as friends. And now I feel just wonderful. I feel great about the companies that you're invested in, especially in the last 6 or 9 months. I feel great about the companies that we're invested in, especially in probably the last 12, 16 months out of the 24 months that we've been doing this. And I feel unbelievably good about the fact that we've just moved our whole focus in the last 9 months to international. That we now have the opportunity, because something really interesting has happened. And we put this in the campaign, but it's really fascinating. 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, 85% of all of the companies, all of the unicorns, they were all US based. That was it. There was nobody else. You got the odd one in England or Finland or Sweden that came through, and that was it. Today, it's 33%. Now, China's got a big bunch of them as well, another 30%, but the other 30 odd percent are all over the world. And they're coming out of Africa, which has got 4 unicorns right now and will probably grow to 40 or 50 in the next 5 or 10 years. They're coming out of India. They're coming out of Estonia. They're coming out of Sweden. They're coming out of the UK, out of everywhere. So now we've hired 8 associates, and the only things they do is they go around the world and they're just looking. And the wonderful thing is they do it virtually, and they go around the world and they're just looking for the fastest growing in those particular regions. And that to me is the most exciting thing that's going to happen in the next 5 years.
Well, absolutely. I mean, venturing into the international market was the smart thing to do because of the advent, and I think the advent of social media, you could say, connecting through the web. And then unfortunately, COVID, a positive side effect has been the Zoom and the expansion of communication through the web. Now it's a normal practice. It's not odd. It's common. You can meet 50 people in a day, and before you'd meet 2 or 3 companies because you're traveling. I mean, this is a world of difference, and the people are more apt to meet with you also because it doesn't take up their day. They don't have to entertain. They don't have to socialize. You're just doing business, okay? 15 minutes of business, 20 minutes of business. That's it. Before it would be a 2-hour project. Now it's 15 minutes, to get to what you need to get to. So you have to take advantage of all those situations,
Yeah.
And the other advantage that you have, as I mentioned to you way back when in the beginning, was everyone thinks of America, the streets are paved with gold.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's certainly a lot of opportunity here, but it's not, you still got to do the work. Okay?
It's gold plated, right?
Right. Still a lot of work, okay? But the opportunity is probably tenfold, but you got to do the work, right? And you got to be prepared. Right?
Yeah. And then you do, and you're so right. You said this to me right at the beginning. Oh, everybody in the world wants a piece of America. Yeah, maybe some people might be listening and say, well, I don't want to move to America straight, but you all want a piece of America. America has the dream whereby you can do anything that you want to do, at least in people's mind.
Market. That's
Yes.
a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Because they can get that piece from Estonia or Africa,
And that was the idea. We become the gateway to America, and I couldn't be more pleased with how it's worked. Now I want to just throw 2 more questions at you, and I want to lead with a negative one. And I know you'll always be very honest because that's your nature. And I didn't mention I was going to say this, but considering there are other investors listening, what are the areas within Expert Dojo that we need to improve on, that we need to get better on in 2021 going forward, for you to be comfortable that you're going to get your maximum return from the money that you invested in us?
Well, I think you need to, of course, through the investor network, you have a good support group, some financial, some marketing, some product, etc. But you need to have a few more of those people maybe strictly associated with the dojo so they can put more input on a daily basis, okay? One of the things I find with startups is, okay, most of them are tech people because mostly we're dealing in tech. So they're good in tech, they're not good in marketing or sales, let's say, for example, or organization. So when they interview these sales managers, they all look impressive to the guy. So of course he hires a guy, but it's the wrong guy because he doesn't know sales, he doesn't know marketing. I can't tell you how many times they introduced me to the person that they hired, and I'm like, you're paying this guy 100 grand? I wouldn't pay him 20 grand, okay? For his knowledge and his base. So the problem is some of these people are hiring people that they're not expert in hiring because they don't know that field, okay? But that person looks good to them because they know more than them, right? So I think you need to have a better support system in place, whether it's investors or your own staff, to cover all these failings of the startups, which is primarily how to spend the money, so that's financial in nature, but financial from a business owner's standpoint, not from an
Right.
accountant standpoint. Okay. Like, you wouldn't spend this, that's overspending, whatever. And then, of course, the hiring process, who you're hiring and why are you hiring? You know, I mean, I tell all of the startups to not hire salary. You know, it's a consultancy. You let it run 3 months, 6 months, whatever. You see how it works, and then you go from there.
1099s to kick it off. And
Right.
then afterwards you build it. You start off like a Viking, then you grow and you build your structure,
I
your
mean, there's
process,
two
your procedure.
reasons. One, you can cut bait immediately with no consequence. But more importantly, when you hire somebody with a salary, you probably waste an extra few months because you hired him, you already spent some money, you're going to give him a little more rope, and he still doesn't improve, and you haven't replaced him, so you lost 3 months and that extra money.
Yeah.
So 1099 for sure. Consultancy, always keep them on at, we're growing, you can be part of this, but you got to produce. If not, then you're not part of it.
Yeah. Great call. And then let's finish it up with one last question. For me to make you happy, I owe you a debt of gratitude because you were there when we needed you. Right now, we don't need people. We want people. We want to make sure we bring the retail community in so we can get everybody part of being able to get involved with early stage investment and lower the risks by just being involved and having one large group. But for you to walk away and say, man, I am so pleased that I got involved with Expert Dojo. What would you, and you knowing us right now, and you're saying to me, Brian, this is the return that I want to get from you guys. What do you see it as right now?
You mean the potential return?
Based on the investment that you made in us at the start.
Well, I would say that I'm looking now. I was looking at maybe hopefully 3 to 5. Then I was looking at 5 to 10, and now I'm looking at 10 to 25.
Yeah. I can never guarantee anything, but I can say I've never felt more confident in my life that you and I are going to be very happy about this in the future. But I really mean it. Look, this is nice because we get to share this with other folks. But you and I are going to be friends for a long time in the future. You were there when the dojo needed you, and I'm going to keep you there by our side all the way through.
But I want to say one other thing. In reality, nothing would happen without you. You're like the music man. Okay, you're a man of many hats. You can keep everybody sort of happy and working and going, and just keep. Only you could have kept this thing going all these years.
Thank
Okay?
you. Yeah, it's been a journey, but I love it. So you got to love what you do, and then you never work a day in your life.
Boundless energy, which is absolutely necessary in this, right? And the enthusiasm that is even more important. So
Thank you, sir.